Good evening, everyone. We are students of Department of Management Studies, IIT-Delhi, and will be presenting this paper, Generating Capital from Social Media and Partial Fulfillment of the Course, Digital Marketing, Analytics and Optimization by Professor Arpan Kar. I, Shubham Gupta, along with my teammates Yuvraj Gulati, Shomana Chakrabarti, and Hiranmay Panda, will be presenting this paper. So first we see how do we define the 5 different types of capital in an organization. So the 5 different types of capital are economic, social, symbolic, human, and organizational. Um, these definitions include economic capital includes financial, physical, and manufactured capital resources, while the social capital includes the ability of an individual or group to capitalize on their social connections. The symbolic capital means the honor or prestige associated within a given social structure. The human capital means the skill, knowledge, and abilities of individuals, while the organizational capital means the knowledge stored in databases, routines, patents, and others. Now, coming to the different types of social flows, how different types of capital flows in and out of an organization and also within the organization. So first is the human capital flow. That means generating competencies, understanding the organization, and learning from customer and product feedbacks to improve the product features. The next comes the social capital flow. This means building relationships internally as well as externally. External relationships include relationships with stakeholders, customers, suppliers, regulators, and any other social form of interaction. Organizational capital flow includes operating efficiency and innovations, while symbolic capital flow means increase and decrease in the reputation of the organization, which can be changed by social media interactions. So now we come to how do we generate capital from social media. So here we'll be covering basically 4 tactics, which are listening and branding, mining and deciding, conversing and sharing, and then co-creating and innovating. How does and how is the social media strategy of any organization defined? It's basically depends on the what is the strategy of the organization, that is the organization strategy. Then what are the capital creation goals? Is the organization more focused on creating economic capital, social capital, human capital, or and which ultimately leads to its social media strategy? So now coming to the first tactic of listening and branding, it involves 3 key actions. The first action is commingling of marketing and corporate communication, so that reacting to consumers' comments becomes an opportunity to create symbolic capital through effective linkages. So this basically means that your marketing effort should be intermingled with your corporate communications. They should not see out of tandem with each other, so that every time a crisis occurs, or not even a crisis, any negative feedback or any criticism can be turned into an opportunity for positive marketing of your organization or your product. The second point is rethinking the corporate brand as a social construct where control is shared with the stakeholders. So this increases your symbolic capital. And now instead of generating social capital or the symbolic capital, just in a unidirectional manner, you imagine your organization as a social construct and involve your stakeholders so that your symbolic capital is now created by the organization as well as the external stakeholders. Third is the leveraging electronic word of mouth by complementing the conversations between consumers to enhance the brand and also learn about what creates customer value. So this basically means that you monitor the word of mouth publicity that is being done about your organization or your product, so that you can understand the customer sentiments, what the customer values, and you can enhance the brand, your brand positioning between the customers. The risk of listening and branding becomes that when you are overactive on social media or you are listening to your customer complaints, then the customer might misuse it to basically treat this as a coupon generation tool, and they might just blackmail you on social media with their complaints and to fetch coupon out of you. And the second is that encouraging complaints and surfacing problems without an appropriate reaction can reduce symbolic capital. So if you encourage your complaints to, if you encourage your customers to complain on social media, you might basically damage your organization's reputation if you don't have a proper redressal mechanisms in place. So how do we mitigate this risk is by ensuring that the projects have working partnership among marketing and communications and as well as legal. So when the organization inserts itself on social media, the responses can be streamlined. The second is that establishing monitoring tools and processes to sense significant issues, and where appropriate, the organization should be able to respond. Third comes implementing metrics to analyze the measure of social interactions and the effectiveness of various responses to provide foundation for long-term strategic direction. So how do we implement listening and branding? So the organization can be of 2 types on a wide spectrum. On the extreme left spectrum is the secretive organization, and on extreme right is a transparent organization. So an organization lies between these two ends. It depends on the organization's strategy, that how much information that they want to reveal, and in the and which manner they want to reveal it in. So there are three ends of listening and of any organization. So, or the three capital: social capital, symbolic capital, and human capital. And to control each of them, there are several actions that they can be taken. So either the organization can have more control, or it can be more transparent. It can either invite criticism or ignore criticism. Uh, then it can be then the level of socialness. It can be either social, it can be either community level, or it can be on an individual level. So by varying these three types of actions, or by varying the degree of these three types of actions, the organization can implement different levels of listening and branding. So when it comes to information spectrum, the organization can proactively determine in advance that what information that they want to disclose. Secondly, they follow a reactive model and have to have a process in place to respond to provide information based on events or requests, or they could decide to remain completely open. When it comes to criticism, the organization can invite criticism, or it can have a process and resources in place to respond to criticism. Then an organization needs to decide where they want to fight back or towards criticism, or either take it on the chin, or rather completely ignore it. So these three actions will determine what is your criticism response strategy and how it will affect. In which case, it cannot be like one size fits all. Different types of situation demands different types of reaction to different criticisms. So depending on the severity of the situation, an organization can decide to fight back, ignore, or simply take it on the chin. Then it comes to socialness. This basically means a form of loose affiliation characterized by infrequent and casual interactions, and is more likely to be feasible for most organizations. So how do you build communities of your customers? Do customers interact with you just as individuals, or you like to build a community that depends on how social you want to be, you want your organization to be? So the key insights from this is that listening and branding moderate the need for human and organizational capital investment. It reduces the perceived project risk. It reduces the costs involved, and it is likely to increase top management. It should have top management support. So there is a case study of Campbell Kitchen. So the Campbell Kitchen basically started posting their recipes online on Facebook. So the recipes were shared with few restrictions. Consumer comments were encouraged, and objectionable content was moderated. So this was the control strategy. Then when it came to information strategy, the reactive approach was followed. So whenever customer information was requested, with transparency, they provided information about recipe sources and ingredients. The criticism strategy was reactive, and they reacted to factual and health-related criticism, but inflammatory comments were generally ignored. And the socialist strategy was to operate a loose affiliation model with occasional consumer comments, ratings, and recipe reuse. Now coming to mining and deciding, my teammate Yuvraj will take over.
So as Shubham has discussed about listening and branding, so once we have got the feedback from the consumers on the various social media platforms, the key is to analyze those comments on the different forums that we have gathered. So mining is basically concerned with analyzing that social media data and getting valuable insights from that using different methods. So even in the predictive analytics, we have understood that there are multiple methods that we use for deriving insights from the data. So in this, we can use clustering, we can use text mining. So what are the different data sources that we use here for analysis? So these are first in the form of text analysis that we get from the different forums or comments on various social media websites or platforms. Second is the website usage records. We track the consumers' usage on the website as to how much time they're using a particular website, what all sections they are looking forward to. And on that basis, we derive the meaningful insights that can help us in future decision making. So there are certain risks that are associated with data mining that we should take into consideration before applying it in the social media. First is the unreliable data. So there might be chances that the users have put in false reviews. There are discussion forums with a lot of redundant data or redundant messages. So we need to take care of that, and we need to filter out that. Second is text mining challenges. So this is the lack of precision due to so since there is no numerical data analysis and it is more on text basis, so there is always a scope. There is always scope for ambiguity and misspelling. So we need to take that into consideration. And third is a large data set. So when we are talking about the text analysis or when we are talking about different social media comments and platforms and discussion forums, so they have huge number of messages. So it is very difficult to manage but if we are able to manage it, it can reveal us very predictive trends and patterns which we can use in planning for the future. So how we implement this tactic is first is to identify the social flows. So it begins with identifying the most important interactions that are happening within and outside the organization. There are different types of interactions that happen, which we'll be discussing in the next slide. So the next step would be to choose tools and expertise. So once we have gathered the data from the different sort of interactions that we are looking forward to, the next step would be to uh, finalize the tools that we would be using to analyze that data. We analyze it by combining different methods and tactics to derive meaningful insights. And third would be to invest in existing infrastructure. So since we mentioned that the data sets are very large in number, so we need to have a strong infrastructure to ensure that we are able to control that large, messy data, and at the same time, we are able to ensure that there is privacy for the consumers as well. Moving on to the next slide. These are the four different type of interactions or the social flows that happen. So first is the organization to environment. So this is basically concerned with how an organization is reacting to the outsiders or the consumers. So this is a kind of advertising or the PRs that are being done by the company. So all those come under the first sort of flow. Second is environment to organization. So this includes the reviews done by the consumers on the different products or services that are being launched by the companies. So this provide companies with a sort of feedbacks which they can work upon in the future products or services. Third is external communities and forums. So this is a bi-directional flow. Others are the unidirectional flow. So this talks about the different discussion forums that are there on the social media. So we have communities that are set up wherein different companies or individuals from companies can come and have a discussion. So this talks about that. And fourth is the internal community that talks about the stakeholders that are within the organization and how they are able to interact with each other. Now moving forward. So what are the key insights that we derive from this mining and deciding tactic? First is that bi-directional social flows are key. So when we are mentioning about the flows, it is always crucial to ensure that they are bi-directional because it gives a better perspective to understand the scenario from both the stakeholders. Second is the bandwagon phenomena. So it talks about how we should carefully leverage the viral effect. So there are times when companies have used this bandwagon phenomena over social media platforms and they have got a huge traction and popularity. So this is a key in ensuring that companies are able to build a strong social media capital. Third is we have to ensure that we merge social media data and enterprise data to ensure that we have good data warehousing as well as management techniques. Fourth is capital generation. So the main aim of this mining technique is to extract insights to build human capital by understanding the various customer preferences and trends. So one case study related to is this. This is the Obama's case study. So what Obama did was that he was extensively using the social media for this is with respect to the election. So why during the election, so he was ensuring that there is extensive use of social media to interact with the different prospective voters and gather more and more votes. So the team always ensured that there is bi-directional flow. So they're able to understand the consumer's needs and they were able to work upon that in that way. So now moving forward with the next tactic, Shramona will take over.
Uh, so now discussing the third tactic here, which essentially is conversing and sharing. It essentially wants to build strong networks in the workplace based on meaningful conversations and sharing of knowledge. So there are four important models that can sustain this. The first being social influence, wherein you essentially influence each other's behaviors to keep the engagement high. The second is social exchange, wherein fostering of value is done through reciprocal benefits or two-way learning. The third is social capital, which involves strengthening bonds with visible connections and a holistic theory about linkages and other relationships. The fourth is network effects, which which involves growing engagement as more people join in and more knowledge is shared. Moving to the next slide. So the key insights here are again, firstly, top management participation, which is very necessary in order to drive the organizational culture of conversing and sharing knowledge among each other, be it one directional or multidirectional. Second, in incentives. Incentives are extremely necessary to sustain tactics, but rather than monetary incentives, other tactics can be used, such as fostering organizational and social relationships at workplace. And the third is enhancing social capital, which essentially means social media can be used as an opportunity to extend organizational learning networks and network with people within and outside the organization. The I think there was a case study of Lockheed Martin's, wherein essentially, again, uh, the case exemplifies how the leadership commitment initially drove this initiative of support from the top management to the other workers in the organization. Secondly, there was a cultural change in the organization from need to know to need to share, wherein knowledge was shared among everyone in the organization. And thirdly, there was an enhancement in the organizational capital, and together, I think the insights illustrate how the structured conversing and sharing helped them build a stronger and more agile organization. We can move to the next tactic.
Yeah, so the last tactic is co-creating and innovation. So if we talk in a mere definition way, co-creating and innovation simply means about sourcing ideas, evaluating and garnering solutions from employees, customers, and suppliers, as well as from the crowd. So it is thus about crowdsourcing, getting rating, reviews, awarding achievements to the best source. So the ultimate goal is to have a wide range of stakeholders to have more engagements on the platform and mutual creation of the innovative products. So we have seen a lot of times in the discussion forums, uh, be it discussion about the analytical problems or the coding stuff, competitions such as Top Coder, where people discuss the solutions and source solutions from the large number of experts who are there. And even check.com is also a glaring example of the same, right? So implementing the co-creating and innovating tactic, so we can see the online and face-to-face. These are the two types of method. And here we have depicted in terms of the square matrix, right? So marketplace is where it is basically prevalent, where scope is large, and there is reward for participation, and there is also encouragement for new ideas. Also, if we talk about the community, it solves problem, and there is an internal and external participation. It is lightly organized and iterative, and in rewards can be intrinsic as well as extrinsic, right? So relational category focuses on intrinsic rewards. Now the clan We can see the fixed group of people are there, knowledge exchange is there, and it sticks for the longer time. And also, if we talk about, if you just move to the next slide. So one of the key findings of this tactic is there are reliable stewards are there, that is to manage co-creation and communication with the public stakeholders. One of the challenges is to control commitment from external contributors and risk of gaming by users, which we can see in one of the case studies, the size predictions. Checks and balances. So implement checks and balances to monitor address disruptions and establish policies to handle hacks and maintain fairness. And value creation is also one of the key takeaways from this tactic, that it generates organizational capital, drives social and symbolic capital through collaboration, and yields high ROI from small investments and micro innovations. So given we can see there is a high ROI and the investment is very low and the output is considerably very high. So it is one of the popular, we can say, social media tactic that is implemented across organizations. Now, science prediction exchange is one of the examples that was provided in the reading case. So it is basically a virtual marketplace for predicting future events using virtual currency. Over 30,000 members were registered by 2009. Frequent rule manipulation and changing of the rules by the users were there. There was not a stipulated policy that was in place. So it resulted in struggle to balance control and user empowerment. So although dynamic rules helped in empowering users, but it also kind of compromised on the control and the checks and balances. So the outcome was eventually it led to shutdown due to inconsistent rules and the gaming challenges. Now moving on to the next slide. So we discuss about the 4 popular tactics: listening and branding, mining and deciding, conversing and sharing, and co-creating and innovating, and the eventual capital goals that are generated from these tactics. So here we can see all of that. We have also mentioned the skills that are required as per the reading case. So I talked about the co-creating and innovating, which requires digital entrepreneurship skills. Risk is low to medium. So risk is related to the ROI that is in place for all these tactics. And structure also refers to the requirement of the structure, how elaborate structure is required in an organization. And if there anything goes south, so are there available measures? So we can say that measures are there for all these tactics. If we go to the next slide. So last case study is from Amex. So we talked about the social media tactics. So eventually the organizations shifted from tactics to the social media strategy. So we can see initially it started from the regular branding effort by Amex, later evolved into sophisticated tactics like listening, encouraging conversations, and sharing knowledge among consumers. We can see member projects that facilitated conversations. Open forum was also encouraged by Amex. Some of the examples are live conferences, blogs, Idea Hub, Connectodex, and merchant rewards. And if you go to the next slide, we can understand in a tutorial way. So here we can see in 2007, it started with branding, right? And from merchant's perspective and from consumer perspective, it involved the implementation of conversing and sharing and co-creating tactics in the member project. For Twitter, it was essentially listening and branding. And for Facebook, it was listening and branding complemented with conversing and sharing. And members know conversing and sharing. In 2009, for merchants, from branding, it switched to the tactics, listening and branding and conversing and sharing. Now, it also propagated Small Business Saturday in 2010, and members know, which was listening and branding and mining and deciding. So eventually we can see how the Amex social media strategy developed over the time. Also, engagement with merchants was encouraged with smart offers, which provided increasingly sophisticated APIs for merchants to present targeted offers to consumers. So this also helped in overall increment of the sales. So this was basically a brief about the reading presentation we discussed. So thank you so much.